Hello, and thanks for joining us. Another edition of the Irish Angle. I've Nagle Johnny Ward here, and we're going to have a look back at all the things that happened in the last week and have a little look ahead to York, which is the big news this week. Lots happening there, all the top racing. So, Emma, Johnny, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Vincent.
Now, start off, there was a bit of sad news last week. Black Caviar, the star mare out in Australia, passed away. She was some performer back in the day, wasn't she? 25 races unbeaten, including 15 Group 1s. Emma, was she before your time, or do you remember her?
No, I remember well her coming over to Ascot that time, all the hype around her. I remember before she came as well, I used to, you get the videos on YouTube or whatever of her races, and just looking at the reaction there, like from the Australian media agencies, like the kind of hold she had over the whole country, and it kind of transferred over a year, I suppose. Then when she came over and ran in a while Ascot, she was kind of a superstar, nearly beyond racing. Really sad news, but she was just brilliant. Unbeaten in how many starts was it? 22 races or something like that. A litter of great Group 1s. She maybe got a bit of a scare in Ascot that day, but I think everyone was kind of willing her over the line. Yeah, it was massive back then. I would have been young enough now, so maybe I don't remember her as well as others would, but I remember all the hype around her. And yeah, just looking at the everything on social media yesterday, the whole country of Australia seems to be devastated by the news.
Yeah, it's a huge thing out there, the horse racing. It really is massive stuff. Johnny, what do you think of horses like Black Caviar? They're fantastic for the sport, aren't they?
Yeah, and that's kind of what, if you read the New York Times having an article on her is telling in itself. This was just published actually in the last few hours, and she transcended racing to become a household name in Australia and revived for a time a sport in decline. At the height of her career, she graced the cover of Vogue, met Queen Elizabeth II, and had her own line of shampoo and conditioner. And to be fair to any horse, to have a 25 from 25 at any level is almost impossible to do at this stage. And she wasn't that old either. She hadn't actually turned 18. And I remember the hype around her, as Emma says, coming over to Royal Ascot, and that kind of little bit of rivalry with the Aussies as well, that serves sport so well. She was a remarkable horse. I think it's fair to say there's every chance we won't see her likes ever again.
Yeah, shampoo brand. I never knew about that. I might try and buy a bottle at some stage. Yeah. Anyway, moving on to other things we do. There was a big shock last week in Tremor. We seem to get one every week, 150 to 1 winner. But I think there was an even bigger shock in the RDS in the racehorse to riding category. Mika Wallace. Tell us about this one, Emma.
Yeah, I wasn't actually up there now. I was trying to go up there, but I couldn't go in the end. But yeah, like looking up the lineup of horses, I think anyone would have gotten excited to see them. Like there were the likes of Absolute Hard, Monkfish as well, who's recently retired from Willie Mullins, was up there. Briar Hill, a Cheltenham Festival winner. Littered of them, but the winner was Micah Wallace. I think he'd won 5 times on the track, rated 50, ran for Mark Cahill. And his rider, Stephanie McGlynn, I think. I was just double check to get that name right, but yeah, he obviously is excelling in his second career, and it's mad to think it, because you think the talent on the racing track would kind of just cross over into the show ring, but obviously he's excelling in his second career, and it's nice to see it as well, because a horse who didn't really take to racing, I suppose, didn't obviously go to the same heights as the others who were in the ring with him on the track, but I was able to compete with them at the highest level in the horse show. It was brilliant to see it, and it's nice to see him in the second lives as well. Seeing the likes of Monkfish and those who obviously ran only a few months ago, and he's able to get to the RDS so quickly. It kind of just shows how intelligent these animals are to be able to transfer their skills over so quickly.
Yeah, it's nice to see as well. A horse rated 50 can have another career afterwards. You would think that there was a factory looming there normally for those sort of ones. But what do you think of that, Johnny? It's good for the game, isn't it, to be able to retrain them to do something else afterwards, because they do have a long life after racing is finished with them.
Yeah, like definitely. And, when you see what goes on at the RDS, it's so different. And some horses that wouldn't have nearly enough pace, I suppose, to race they just have a complete aptitude for that. It's a bit like kind of, I think, run-of-the-mill horses really taken to the banks, and you often see the high-class horses don't take them. And after all the stuff you mentioned about the factory and all that, after all the stuff about the abattoir in Kildare, which has kind of gone out of the news since really now, after all of that, and the emphasis and kind of the spotlight being put on the welfare of horses, I think the RDS is a brilliant example of what can happen. I was speaking to Patrick Mullins at Tremor, and he was saying that he was going up to judge as to be part of one of the judges on the Saturday, and Willie was up there as well, and I think Noel Meade was there. I still haven't actually done it. Sounds like a great day out to go to the horse show, but it's a brilliant spectacle actually as well. Like when I was a kid, growing up, we probably only had 2 TV channels. And, you know, I remember the captains kind of racing for Ireland, and we were all proper patriots at that stage of our life. And we used to really enjoy watching it, even though we've no horse racing background whatsoever. And it's still a kind of really endures after all these years in the RDS. And it's a great spectacle, I think.
Yeah, as a kid growing up in Dublin, that was an annual pilgrimage for me and our family. Every year we would have gone. I was dragged kicking and screaming some of the time, but you always went anyway. The RDS was definitely a day out, at least one of the days. Moving on, we had a biggish story last week, but we don't know if it's a story yet or what it is really. But the top 4 trainers in the National Hunt game, we know that there was the previous month, Horse Racing Ireland announced that they were going to have a new series that precluded those 4 specifically from running their horses in its 60 races in the year to try and give everyone else a chance. And now we hear that those big 4 are now threatening legal action against Horse Racing Ireland for discriminating against them. What do you make of this, Johnny?
Yeah, I wrote about this in the Business Post on Sunday. So I did a fair bit of research into it. And I suppose the first thing I found was that generally it seems as though the trainers, the 4 relevant trainers, this is the vibe I'm getting anyway, that they're happy to stay off the record at the moment, that they don't really want to be in the media about it. But at the same time, I actually spoke to a few trainers at Tramore. 2 of them spoke to me on the record, Philip Rothwell and Ken Budds, and both are against it. And Philip Rothwell actually finished 5th in the Trainers' Championship last year. It's really mad when you look at the trainers' figures last year. Philip Rothwell was miles clear of 6th. And with respect to Philip Rothwell, like he's barely had a good horse in the last 10 years. But he had a very good season last season. And he was actually 5th, so he'd be next in the list. Joseph O'Brien was 6th, and the rest weren't even mapped in terms of these figures. But then you'd compare, say, Gavin Cromwell to Willie Mullins, and they're in the same bracket in this kind of exclusion. And you'd wonder, is that fair as well? Because, like, Gavin trains a lot of flat horses, but he's invested a lot of money, came from absolutely nothing, really came from nothing. And everything he's grown is through hunger, ability, and you know, hard work, basically, and all of that. So they'd be excluded from 1.2 races a week, give or take. I see both sides of the argument here, Vinny. Like, I think it's a little bit like the changes in Gaelic football rules at the moment. I think they're definitely necessary, but whatever you do, someone will pick a hole in it, or there will be a flaw in it. In terms of the legality of it, Andrew Coonan would suggest, sort of from my speaking to him, that when you sign up to the statutory body of HRI and you sign up to be part of it, that you kind of, you know, you're beholden to what happens thereafter, and that these trainers might have to just kind of put up with the fact that they signed up to the auspices of HRI and they see what happens afterwards with regard to race program. While it's also arguing that they can argue that it's you know, it's denial of their right to make money. Ger Lyons, as you'd expect, I asked Ger for a quote, and it was almost 100 to 1 on that he'd be saying something similar to what he said, which is like, you're punishing people here. He had a good line about everyone talking out, getting a medal. That's not how I operate. And Ger again is this brilliantly he's a good talker. He's a very high achieving trainer, and you can see why he doesn't put up with the crap of everyone thinking that they deserve to earn a living. I suppose the problem is, though, Vinny, and you know this, Emma knows this, Emma probably knows it better than the 2 of us. It's the National Hunt game has gotten so concentrated, like so concentrated, that it's hard to get owners in who are not paying the big money to the store horse and mainly the ex-point horse and the horses from France. And the economics, the one last thing I like to say in this is the economics of jump racing now are so bad that, like, you're waiting so long for the horse to run. That's if he or she doesn't get injured. Then you're kind of waiting to get in. You're waiting to get him or her handicapped. The chance of injury is very high. Prize money is really poor at that level in jumps racing. Really poor. You could rock up into a 20-runner race at Navan and you get like $4,000 after deductions, if even. And that's if you win the race, and that's with a horse that's lowly rated. You have all of this money, and the cost of training, the cost of all of this has gone up and up. So the economics of it are so bad, and then you've like, well, we've no chance, absolutely no chance of competing with the big yards here and the big races. So something probably does need to be done, but I can see why the other trainers, particularly the likes of Gavin Cromwell, who's the lowest of the 4, would have an issue with it. Yeah, I can too. The other thing with this is, look, if you take it in its natural progression, if they did nothing, if horse racing in Ireland sat in its hands for another 10 years, where would we be here? We currently have a situation where the top 2 trainers are winning around a quarter of all the National Hunt races between the 2 of them. So if you were to take that on another 5-10 years, if presuming the 2 of them are still going strong and nothing happens to interfere with that, they could literally be training 350 winners a year each. You could have maybe the Henry de Bromheads and Gavin Cromwells up at 200 each.
you could end up in a situation where there's only about 10 or 15 trainers left in the country if you let it go on like this, because we've lost a huge amount of trainers over the last 10 years.
You know the other thing, Vinny, just come in on that. Like, the other thing is, like, you look at Jimmy Mangan last year with the horse for JP. So JP spreads his horse around, and you look at, say, it was funny enough that Simon Munir was one of the owners quoted. I think he was on Twitter, or X, or whatever you want to call it, and he came out against it. But he gave a horse to Tom Gibney last year, and I met Tom Gibney early on when Intense Raffles was with him. It is down to owners where the horses go, and like it's probably beholden on owners to spread their horse around a bit. They don't all need to be with Willie Mullins. They don't all need to be with Gordon Elliott. We've exceptional trainers. Look at Martin Brassil. We've exceptional trainers in this country, and it's down to the owner where the horses go. So if you were more like JP McManus, we'd have a lot more trainers having winners.
Well, you see, no, I'm not quite sure there, because look, there's the JP McManus. He's so many horses. He has them in nearly every yard, Britain and Ireland. You have Simon Munir as well. He's got this sort of nursery system where he puts them up at the Crawfords, and then if they do well, they move into Willies and so on. And that Raffles horse that won the national, that came from France, did it? So like, they've got a whole nursery thing going on there. They're big owners. But if you take it, yourself and Emma, we decide to buy a horse, we've only got the one here, and we're trying to get it to the best possible trainer we can. So where are you going to send it? Do we, do you close your eyes and put your stick a finger in a page and find a trainer somewhere in Ireland, or do you go with Willie Mullins, Gordon Elliott, Henry de Bromhead, Gavin Cromwell, the ones that have proven success? That's the issue, isn't it?
No, but you go to another trainer then. Like, if you go to Willie has 17 horses left in the Ballymore the week beforehand. Willie often will run horses basically to suit spreading his own horse around, and that's his entitlement. When you sign up to have a horse, Willie Mullins, like, you're dealing with a genius here. But Willie has gotten to where he is today by having a great relationship with owners. If you have a very good horse and you send them to Martin Brassil or someone else like that, a really good trainer, and there are some serious trainers that are not in the top four, this is your stable star. He's not going to be any worse for
it. I agree. But you just have to look at the economics of it. Why are they not doing that? Why is Martin Brassil's door not getting kicked down every day by owners trying to put horses there? There's a reason, because they know that if they go to Willie, they will win. If they go to Martin Brassil, they might win, I suppose, is what the thing they're thinking here. People are trying to get the best out of their horse in whatever way, and they want to try and win at Cheltenham, seems to be the vast majority. What do you make of it, Emma?
Yeah, I'm not sure about on that point. I suppose, look, it's a thing. I suppose Willie and Patrick and the whole team now, they're so eager to expand. They're meeting owners, and this. You imagine a man like Martin Brassil, he's not really the kind to go out and be courting owners. They come to him, and he'll do as well at a horse as anyone else. But look, I agree with you. HRI had to do something, but like Danny mentioned, where they drew that line in the sand maybe is a little bit controversial. You would feel, I suppose, for Gavin and Henry, because like looking at the stats for the last year or two, like they're well over 100 winners behind the top two. So like, do you make these races just without Gordon and Willie? I thought the initial response to it was quite positive, but like Johnny mentioned, there has been a few big names and smaller names coming out and saying it wasn't quite the right thing to do. I suppose with something like this, there's always going to be people slating it, but look, what could HRI have done? I see the point being made, like Johnny said, Journaline's Vincent, you can't punish success, but interesting, I read the comments from Philip Rothwell as well. He was kind of suggesting putting on more lower grade level races, but I think what HRI were kind of hoping to do with this, just kind of my interpretation of it anyway, like they're putting on bumpers and maiden hurdles and beginners chases. That's trying to get a higher level of horse into the smaller yards, rather than you're putting on more of those 0 to 102 hurdles, or horses rated less than 0 to 102 beginners chases. You're just taking Gordon out of those, really. Willie's not really in those races. It wouldn't have much effect on I suppose Gavin Cromwell wins a lot of those, and Henry might have the odd few, but you're just kind of putting on races that Willie won't be winning then. But I think having these type of races, they're kind of encouraging lads to buy a horse at the sales, send it to Ross O'Sullivan, and maybe have that little Cheltenham dream with him, rather than having it with Willie, because you're not going to bump into this horse from France who's going to win the Supreme Novice Hurdle when you're going for a maiden hurdle in Fairy House or whatever. Look, it's mixed. I was very surprised when I heard the news of the legal action. Look, it's how much is going to come out of it, I suppose, is we'll have to wait and see, because like Johnny said, no one's really speaking on the record yet. But you can see a point if it is Henry and Gavin who are leading this. But I can't really see much of a case for Willie and Gordon having a strong opposition to this, to be honest, because like you said, the kind of concentration of national hunt racing has just gone so unhealthy they had to do something about it. And like for it's quite a minuscule number of races. It's 60 races out of, is it 1,050 in the calendar year? It's absolutely tiny. It'd be, like Johnny said, just over one race a week if it's spread out throughout the calendar. So interesting to see where it goes. I hope something like it goes forward. Maybe they'll have to retweak the idea a bit more. It's probably a bit raw the way they put it out initially to the media, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes forward, I suppose.
Just on that again, Vinny, and maybe you're right, but if you are a wealthy owner and you can spread your horse around, like it is to me, and I'm not, I mean, I've had horses with one of the top 4 trainers involved. I've had horses with all bar Henry of those 3, and they were brilliant to deal with, like, right. And all the horses I had were either no good or they were modest, like. But at the other level, if you've had horses with these top trainers, it is actually beholden on you to look at the national game as well and say, if I spread my horse around a bit here, they probably won't be trained any worse, or it'll be a small thing. And you'll be helping the game. But for Gavin Cromwell, like Gavin Cromwell he didn't come from having a load of wealth. He has invested so much money. Like he spent fortunes on buying land beside him there, fortunes on buying land. He is the epitome of progress through like hard work and ability. And for him to be punished because of the money he's invested and because of placing his horses so well, and this would affect him because those 60 races, Gavin would have a lot of runners in them. They'd be the right races for a certain type of horse he'd have. And he'd have to tell his owner, listen, we can't run in that because I've had 56 winners last season, so I'm excluded. So it probably does need to be looked at, I think.
Yeah, but even besides Gavin Cromwell, the other 3 of these 4 trainers have all basically built it up themselves. You can say Willie's father was a champion trainer before him and all the rest of it, but Willie started with a small string and has literally built it up over the years, the whole business model and everything else. Henry de Bromhead similarly, and then Gordon came from nothing too, and look at the size he's built it to. And if he didn't have the setback a few years ago to be even bigger, he probably would be champion trainer ahead of Willie at this stage, probably training 300 plus winners. So look, something had to be done, no question about it. The only thing for me is, initially, it's a small enough step, I suppose, as you say. It's only 60 races. It's 4% of the total National Hunt races in the season. And then it's probably only around 2% of the prize money that's going to be at stake here. So it's really not going to affect them that badly. The other thing is here, the benefit, where does it go? It'll probably go to the middle tier, as Emma was saying. If you do have a horse and you want to aim it at these sort of races, you're going to put it with a Ross O'Sullivan or whoever in the middle tier. You're not going to be really helping the bottom tier here necessarily. So we might still see a few dropping off the bottom even with this. It just might concentrate it more among the top 30 trainers or top 40 trainers rather than all trainers. But anyway, we'll move on. Racing last week, we saw some extraordinary stuff. Whistle Jacket, I was shocked to see that pop up in Doville. Wins a Group 1 in Doville only, a week after finishing second in the Phoenix Stakes. This is some performance made, and he does this regularly with these 2-year-olds. He's not afraid to run them, Johnny, is he?
No, and I don't know if it's kind of it depends maybe on the horse as well. Like it depends on the breeding of the horse and all that. But this was quite unusual, He, in terms of the Colts 2-year-olds that he has, this guy's absolutely well up there. And I was not expecting him to, I didn't seem to have any excuses really behind Babouche, and then to rock up 8 days later in France was unexpected. But some trainers train horses completely differently. Jim Bulger would run a 2-year-old a lot. Even he ran a horse 3 times in a couple of weeks to nearly win 3 guineas. And Aidan is not afraid to run them if he thinks they're hardy enough. And this horse taking his race well, very good performance. Probably a sprinter more than a miler, maybe going into next year. But I wasn't expecting this, I have to say, Vinny.
No, and Doville, they got some cracking racing there over the week. I see Joseph had some good runners as well, just got pipped in a couple of races yesterday as well. But the other big one from the week was Economics. What about this horse, William Haggis, Emma? Won the Dante back in May, doesn't reappear, missed out in the Derby and everything else, reappears in Doville, looking at the second half of the season now after winning the Group 2 there, impressively again.
Yeah, he's exciting. Joseph had 2 winners in Doville as well. I think he won a maiden over there worth €160,000 or something. So it was a nice enough placing, and I think he won a listed race as well yesterday. So good enough weekend there for the Irish. But yeah, Economics. I suppose everyone was kind of waiting and seeing where he'd be after he won the Dante. I suppose fairly well publicised. He had a lot of blood in his nostrils that day. So he was maybe a bit of a warning for punters coming into this. But yeah, he was really, really impressive and looks probably like an exciting one to follow for the second half of the season, where they'll go next. I think there might have been mention of the Irish Champion Stakes possibly. could they go somewhere like that? And yeah, he's a nice one to have back on the scene, because it's probably a 3-year-old colt maybe lacking a star outside of the likes of City of Troy. In a way, we'll see him back as well during the week. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he does for the second half of the season, and has obviously put whatever issue he had after winning the Dante behind him. I don't think we ever heard an explanation for that blood in the nostrils either. So I'd like to hear more about that as well.
Yeah, well, normally if you do give them time, if they burst, it does help. So they gave him plenty of time, I suppose. The other thing is that Irish Champion Stakes could turn into some race the way it's looking, because we've White Birch now has been scratched from York this week and is going to be heading Irish Champion Stakes. You have that Economics. We'd Continuous, which won at the weekend. Aidan is talking about that going Irish Champion Stakes before a crack at the Arc. God knows what will happen with City of Troy and the rest of them. But one other one from last week to talk about was Grosvenor Square. Did you see that win, Johnny? St. Leger Trial, 20 lengths. That just pounded him into the ground, didn't it?
Absolutely extraordinary. Like, and when you think of, I think the race that he was second in the last week behind Tower of London was probably one of the most extraordinary races I think we've seen this season. But this performance for me, Vinny, was absolutely extraordinary, because I was previewing the race and Off the Ball on Friday, and I basically was of the opinion, like, there's, you get these horses that go out in front, but he must have been flattered the last day, basically, like, there's no way he can do this again. And sort of halfway, maybe 2/3 of the way through the race on Saturday, you're thinking, like, how in the name of God are these horses going to pick him up? But like the likes of A Piece of Heaven, who, when Barry Fitzgerald had him, he really liked him as a horse. He's rated 100, Absurd rated 110. And you watch them, like, Absurd kind of tried to go after Grosvenor Square to an extent and ended up being 6 lengths behind A Piece of Heaven, which is extraordinary. So the horses that, like, and they did, Declan McDonough did try to get after him. It wasn't like they let him have a solo. When they tried to get after him, they started falling into a hole. And the fact that Courageous Strike finished second obviously would lead you to wonder what happened in the race. But the horses that went after him, the two that were second and third in the betting, they were legless going after him. This horse, for me, he's only 3. Like, he could be an extraordinary good stayer if he continues to progress. And when you think, watching him the last day, how good his Conqueror is the day before, like how good Tower of London is to beat him, and that was an amazing race. But Grosvenor Square is developing into a serious stayer.
Yeah. Now, looking ahead, we've got York this week, where we're going to see serious stayers as well and all sorts of things. But the big thing is just to say, first off, Emma, you've got 2 shows coming up this week. You're going to do 2 tipping shows. You have one coming out on Tuesday with Tanya Stevenson, another one on Friday with Don McLean, where you'll be previewing all the big racing, both Ireland and England at the weekend, but particularly York for the early part of the week. So what about York, Emma? City of Troy Wednesday, that's the big one, isn't it? The Juddmonte.
Yeah, definitely. Really, really exciting, I suppose, to have him back out. Just got the declarations in through there a while ago. I think there's 13 in it. Just had a quick look at him there. He's obviously going to be the bit of the star of the show, I suppose. But Aidan's running one other. I think he has that Hans Anderson in it, and there isn't much other Irish representation in there. But yeah, 13 in it. City Troy obviously 4 to 5 favourite. There's that Calandigan as a very interesting one as well. Obviously the French horse who won a Royal Ascot. And Blue Stockings in there as well for Rafe Beckett, the good filly. Ambiente Friendly, really interesting one I thought as well. Dropping back to the 10 furlongs, people were kind of saying that might have been what he's screaming out for after maybe not fully staying it out in 2 derbies, I suppose. But him reopposing City of Troy over the shorter trip, definitely really, really interesting. And I suppose question marks, was the 10 furlongs the ideal trip for City of Troy the last day? Does he actually want the 1.5 miles? I suppose he'll prove it here now, whichever way it is. But yeah, exciting, I suppose. He's kind of one of the ones that you're always kind of waiting to see when will he be back out. You kind of mentioned earlier, it's a bit of a pity White Birch won't be there, but I hadn't really heard news of him in a long time, but it was nice to see something about him anyway during the week. They were kind of toying with the idea of going here, but he'd be back for the Champion Stakes, hopefully. But it would have been nice to see him flash off with City of Troy. We didn't get to see it in the Eclipse last time.
Yeah, still alive anyway, White Birch, by all accounts. So that's a good sign. You worry about these when you don't see them and you keep hearing bits and pieces. Might run here. No, we're not running. Might run there. No, we're not running. So hopefully we will see White Birch again, because I thought White Birch was very exciting early in the season. Just looking at the rest of this, Johnny York, would it be a week for you? Would it be a punting week, or what would it be?
I was at York to see Franklin the feature Wednesday, so it was my only visit there, and I wasn't there long enough, but to really get a great feel of it. York's a cool town, like those old English towns. Like, I think they're, the old kind of English towns and villages are far nicer than the Irish ones, because Ireland didn't have a great history of urban kind of settings, and like England did, which is a totally different kind of. And you go around the little villages around, like the little villages around Cheltenham, when you visit there, and they're amazing. York's a class place to go, and like I was lucky to see Frankel there. But this is a really cracking renewal for me of the race. I see as well Samui is running your horse, Vinny, in the 410, which I'm sure you'll be interested in. But it's a cracking card. City of Troy, I'd be expecting a big run from him. I wouldn't be at all surprised though if Alflela gave him a good run for his money. There's going to be so much pace there is. Jim Crowley's mount is going to have, I think he's going to be able to travel away and see if he can pick them up. But City of Troy is just marvellous to see him. On White Birch, I'm really hoping we do see him again, because it's been kind of alarming that we haven't seen him, and there were races that he could have run in. I'd love to see him run in the Arc of the Champion Stakes. But as for York, York's definitely on the bucket list. You haven't gone. It's a cracking town, and this race is it's well worth the kind of history and I suppose it's prestige. It's well up to it this year.
Yeah, and then we've got the Ebor at the end of the week as well. One of Aidan O'Brien's again for this Queenstown. Big gamble. Starting on this anyway, gone from 14s into 8s or something at the moment. This is the horse that finished second to Kyprios back in the spring. 2 runs second to Kyprios. Hasn't been seen since. I think it was due to run at Ascot, but was taken out for a foot injury or something. What about that, Emma? Would that have a chance, Queenstown?
Yeah, definitely. I was actually thinking of, we were thinking of giving a tip for this, and he was definitely in my mind for that. I was listening to a feature that was done in Ballydoyle there, must have been at the weekend or last week anyway, and they were talking about this Queenstown. Maybe that's what started this gamble. But Aidan was saying, like you mentioned there, he ran against Kyprios twice, but he was being used as a lead horse all year for Kyprios. And when they got him to Ascot, I think he had just been a bit battered and bruised from all the hard work he had all year, and he was a bit stiff. And the vets weren't happy, so they didn't run. But I think he's been taken away from Kyprios now, and Aidan said he's gotten a bit of a twinkle back in his eye, I suppose, having an easier time at home. So you'd imagine he's in here with a massive chance. Like off his rating, I think he's fairly well handicapped. And yeah, it's an interesting one seeing a Ballydoyle gamble in a race like this, because they're not normally ones for the big gambles and the big handicaps, I suppose. So yeah, definitely interesting. And Aidan's comments yesterday are definitely worth listening back to on that racing TV feature, because he sounded quite sweet as well.
Yeah, he won an Irish Cesaro, didn't he, Aidan, a couple of years ago with a short price one as well. So it came from last to first or something in the colour. But anyway, one other thing, before we go into picking a tip each for York during the week, but just with another thing there last week in the UK is these alcohol testing of jockeys, and there was a few notable absentees. First with Oisin Murphy wasn't well with his hemorrhoids. He couldn't go for one of the days. He was supposed to have a random test. And Jim Crowley as well, he got stuck in traffic and he didn't turn up either. I'm sure, look, there's nothing to it. They're just coincidences in my book anyway. If there's anything more to it, they'll get to the bottom of it. But what do you make of this, Johnny? Does it do any good, alcohol testing the jockeys? In Ireland, as far as I know, it's been years since a jockey failed an alcohol test at the track. The only one I can remember, high profile one, was Paul Carberry. That must be about 15 years ago. Shortly after they brought in alcohol testing, he was in Galway, and by all accounts, he knew he was going to fail, but he went in anyway and failed. But just in general terms, nobody seems to fail these. So what's the point of them, Johnny?
Well, I think the point of them is, like, if you're riding under the influence of alcohol or another drug, it can definitely impinge on your ability to ride in a race, and you're thus endangering yourself, the horse, and everyone around you. So I think it's there for a good reason. Like, if you go out on a football pitch after a load of pints the night before, you're just going to disgrace yourself. If you ride a horse and you're under the influence, of something or other, and we've a lot of anecdotal tales of how light and how lax the drug testing was in Britain, and a lot of, I spoke to Shane Kelly about this years ago, how the situation in Britain was really, really bad, where basically you could get away with a lot of things, and jockeys were getting away with it. And we've had serious issues with cocaine among a lot of jockeys throughout the years in Ireland and Britain, and this is a relevant issue. The Oisin Murphy thing, I just don't know what to say on that, to be honest. I thought it was extraordinary from start to finish, really. Jim Crowley, again, like, these things happen, I guess, but I defend the authorities. You have to do these tests, and you have to have a standard in terms of safety here, because you're dealing with extremely dangerous races that have massive consequences if things go wrong. And I wouldn't be close enough to know what went on last week, but it was extraordinary.
Yeah, but just with that, cocaine, you say, is an issue, and absolutely it must be, because we're in Ireland, we're catching 4 or 5 jockeys every single year. There's 4 or 5 of them get stood down for periods of time, lose their license, have to go to rehabilitation and all sorts of stuff over testing positive for cocaine. Nobody tests positive for alcohol. So either the test isn't adequate, or it's just, I don't know why they do. Like, I understand why they do it. Obviously, you don't want people riding in races if they're drunk or under the influence of alcohol. Obviously, it would be catastrophic if that happened. But at the same time, if your test isn't catching anyone, maybe there's no one doing it, or else your test isn't adequate. That's what I would have thought with it.
I'm speculating, Vinny, that the standard of the jockeys in Ireland now, that you mentioned Paul Carby, and I'm sure back in the day, and Paul will tell you his own stories, but I don't get the vibe now. I think that the jockeys seem to be very, very professional. Like, they really do. And a lot of the time when they have a winner, they don't even necessarily celebrate that. And like, you'll see a lot of them at Electric Picnic, but everyone was off yesterday. The flat lads anyway. I don't get the impression that it's anywhere near as rampant as it was drinking before going racing. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's lax testing, but I don't think jockeys get away with that as much anymore. The standard is way too high, so you're just not going to get away with it.
Yeah, I agree. They're of a higher standard than they were years ago, in the sense that they do take it very seriously, and they know it's a short career and there's a lot of money in it and everything else. But don't tell me they don't drink. They still drink. I have absolutely no doubt about it. Whether they're drinking on the days off or whatever they're doing, but they're still drinking. There's no question. Emma, have you ever seen a jockey have a drink?
No, never. No. I'd imagine your point on the alcohol and the drug testing. Like, sure, I'd imagine the drugs would stay in their system a lot longer. And look, it's obviously a problem in racing, but it's just a problem in society in general, isn't it? Like, I'd imagine if you went into any big office block and drug tested the whole office, you'd probably get the same amount of numbers coming up positive for any drug test as you would inside a weighing room. So I don't think it's a racing isolated problem. It's just a problem in society, and racing falls within it as well. And I do kind of echo what Johnny's saying, though. Like, a lot of the lads are a lot more professional, I suppose. Like in all sports, like back in the day, the soccer players used to be going out. There's always good stories of Roy Keane going out back in the day with Manchester United, a bit like Paul Carby going out back when he was riding, I suppose. But doesn't seem to be as much anymore. Like, obviously they'll go out and celebrate maybe at the end of the season and stuff, but I don't think you'd be catching as many now with the breathalyzer or the urine test as you would back in the day, definitely.
Fair enough. Anyway, we'll move on. Tips for York. I'll give you one first off anyway. This should win. Jeez, if it doesn't win, I don't know what I'm doing. Arizona Blaze. Adrian Murray runs on Thursday in the Harry $500,000 Goff sales race. Surely to God, this will win a sales race, will it? Won the Marble Hill, third in the Norfolk, third in the Railway Stakes, third to Babouche and Whistlejacket in the Phoenix Stakes only a week or so ago. This should win now. I know it carries a slight penalty, but I'd be expecting that to win for Adrian Murray. A good, hardy 2-year-old should beat them. What did you make of it, Emma? What did you pick out? I
like that Queenstown, but apart from that, in the Ebor, I think the Convivial is always an interesting enough race there on is it the Thursday or the Friday? It's that maiden for 2-year-olds who I think they have to have run less than twice. But it's £100,000 maiden, so it's normally an interesting enough field. And Aidan has 2 a minute. I kind of wait to see which one's declared, I suppose. But the Acapulco Bay was behind Delacroix in one of those really hot maidens we were talking about last week. And the two, they were ridden completely differently. Like, Delacroix was obviously odds on, Ryan Moore on board, went out and made all, but Acapulco Bay was kind of dropped out the back, Wayne Lorden, and made really, really eye-catching headway to run into second. But I'd imagine if he shows up in that Convivial, he'd be fairly hard to beat off the back of that Curra one.
Very good. And Johnny, do you find one for us?
I'm going to go with Harbour Wind in the Ebor. I was at Navan when he won by 7 lengths in July last year. That was 1.2 miles. And even then you knew he wanted to trip, but he's been so good regarding trip. He's won over 1 mile. He's been second over 1 mile and 7. He won the last. He beat Dancing Tango. He's a really, really likeable horse by Nathaniel. And obviously you need a bit of luck in these races, and he wouldn't necessarily have a load in hand, but you can't but see him running a big race for DK.
My God, you spoke on for the hardest race of the week. Anyway, that's more or less it from us. So if you are having a bet on York or anywhere else, do gamble responsibly. Don't be drinking alcohol or taking any drugs. And make sure to subscribe to our channel so you get notifications about Emma's 2 shows coming up this week and all the rest of the video stuff we do on an ongoing basis. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you all again next week. Bye for now.